And welcome. This is Houston Newsmakers Extra. I've been talking with Audrey Omenson, a licensed professional counselor and owner and founder of the Therapy Collective. And we've been talking about depression and all the different things that go into it and the, not the causes, but the contributing factors.
Right.
We're talking about how important it is for someone to have support.
Right.
And I noticed that when Judge Hidalgo announced she was doing that, all the people who came forward, who had comments, were talking about how much they supported her.
Yeah.
It's important, I guess, from the general, for the public. I mean, it has nothing to do with her, but people looking at what's going on to know that there's support for her. But for her to know that that support is there, at some point that has to play a role, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. With taking time off especially, but like doing the things to change and shift where you can. What are some of these factors that have been adding to this? How do I need to change this? Right? What do I need to let go of, do differently? Right? Sometimes that's going to be inconvenient for other people in your life. Right? Like if I'm not agreeing to take on the level of things I took on, or I'm changing how I'm showing up and communicating, or I'm being more vocal about what my needs are, that is going to change dynamics, not just for me, but for everybody else in my life. And so having people around you that are supportive of that, that are celebrating you doing those changes, is really important, because it's already hard enough to make those changes to begin with. And then if you add in people being resentful or frustrated with you on top of it, because you're changing how you're showing up with things, that just makes it all the more difficult.
I want to reiterate, we have no idea about any specifics related to Judge Hidalgo.
Sure.
So no one's going to try to talk about that or her specific case at all. But in general, if someone decides to do inpatient as opposed to just coming to see you around other stuff, does that say something about just the intentionality of that person's efforts to try to get back to normal, or what could that possibly indicate?
So I would say there's 3 tiers of support when you are dealing with depression, based on how severe it is, what your circumstances are, and what your doctors really feel like will be the most effective version of support, right? So one is just, hey, I'm going to see my therapist on a weekly basis, or some version of that, right? Like, so I go in for an hour, we have a talk, we work through some stuff, I'm sent home with some homework, and it's just once a week, outpatient kind of a thing. Then there is this mid-range that's called intensive outpatient. So you still stay at home, but it's something like groups for about 2 or 3 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, right? So it's like you're getting a lot more intensive support, but you're still sleeping in your house. You could still go to work or do some of your responsibilities and that sort of thing. And then you have inpatient, which is you actually go and you stay in a place for a certain period of time. And there's different versions of inpatient, right? Some are, much more intensive places where if you just really need to go in and focus on just this, you can. Sometimes with inpatient, that can be when just the depression has gotten really severe. You might need something like that, right? Where like you even just living your life at home is making things so difficult that's hard to sustain. So there's a couple versions of inpatient, but I'd say those are the 3 kind of tiers of what that can look like.
We were talking earlier about how many people in this country deal with depression, and some of the information you had is really kind of eye-opening about how many Americans, how many people in this country are dealing or have dealt with depression.
Right, yeah, 29% in the most recent Gallup poll, 29% of Americans today at some point in their life have had a depression diagnosis, and that's just diagnosis, right? So that means someone went in, saw a professional, and they gave them a diagnosis. So there's way more people who haven't done that. So I'd say the actual real number is a lot higher than that. I've dealt with depression in my life. A lot of people that I'm friends with or in my family have dealt with it too. It's a really common thing. And I think it's easy for shame and embarrassment to come in and really fuel that isolation. But the truth is, it's really common. It's part of how our nervous system responds to overwhelming situations, and it's a really normal thing. Well,
it seems to me that with all that's going on, that it's also important that we try to do what we can to normalize the reality that people are getting help, and that it's okay to do that.
Well, I think that's why conversations like this are important. I think that's why people like Judge Hidalgo and when celebrities and other famous people share about some of their mental health struggles, again, that's normalizing a lot of this. It's making it a more regular part of the conversation. It's not that it's trendy or that people are trying to get attention. It's that, no, like, we have to know that other people deal with this. It's not just me. It's not that I'm broken. It's, no, this is just part of being a human person sometimes.
This therapy that you offer and others offer give a person who's dealing with depression, after they come through it, let's say, and they get to more of a normal feel, does it also teach them how to kind of tune themselves up when they start feeling if there's a trigger point or something that would kind of tend to make them more depressed, that they know how to handle that and kind of moderate themselves? Yes,
yeah, absolutely. That's part of the healing process, right, is starting to build that connection, mind, body, emotion connection, where you're more aware of yourself. You know how to access and approach yourself with more compassion and empathy. And you're not as overwhelmed or freaked out when some big emotions come up, because now you've learned, hey, I know what to do when this happens. I feel more equipped and prepared.
What would you tell people how they should react to people who they know who've gone and got help for depression? They've been an inpatient, they're coming back into, quote, society. Everybody knows they've been away. What would you suggest their reaction be? Nothing? Or, hey, good to see you back? Or how do you treat that? Just
I'd say we don't need to keep it a secret, right? Like, I mean, like, if you know that this is a thing that they, it's not like you can't talk about the thing. And in fact, I'd say making it a normal thing. You don't need to ask them details unless they want to share it, but just like, hey, I'm glad you're back.
Okay.
How are you doing? How can I support you? What'd be helpful from me, right? And they may have an answer for that and they may not, but just letting it be a thing like, hey, I'm not scared to talk about this if it's ever a thing that needs to come up, and your whole self is welcome.
Good information, Audrey Omenson. Always good to talk with you about anything relating to mental health issues and things in our community.
Absolutely.
You're amazing. Thank you again. We appreciate it. This is Houston Newsmakers Extra. Share this with everyone you know.